What's up guys, my name is Ace, and welcome back to another Battlefield 6 gun guide. In today's episode, we're going to be covering the brand new DMR they added with the Season 4 update. This is the VSSM. And this one does have some interesting characteristics as well as a unique full auto mod, so you can effectively convert this DMR into like a carbine, for instance. So without further ado, let's dive right into this, starting it off with our rate of fire and damage profile. Keep in mind, this is our rate of fire without the full auto kit, and this is 450 rounds per minute, which is tied with the LMR-27 as having the fastest rate of fire in the DMR category. As for damage, we've got a 3 to 5 shot kill potential to the body, but that does of course assume we are hitting that upper torso zone. And with this, our time to kill potential with a 3-shot kill is very fast for a DMR in this game at 267 milliseconds. That's more along the lines of what you'd see with something like an assault rifle, although even then that is worse than average for an assault rifle, and that only extends out to 9.5 meters, which is a very short range. Beyond that, when we're looking at like a 4-shot kill, now we're more in the realm of what's expected out of a DMR with a 400 millisecond time to kill, and then that will jump up to 533 milliseconds with a 5-shot kill. Now, it is also worth noting, in that maximum damage range from 0 to 9.5 meters, we can get a 2-shot kill if both bullets hit the head, and that will give us a 75 millisecond time to kill, which is nearly instant. So at least at close ranges, headshots are very, very effective, and you can also be mixing them in other ranges, like in the second damage range, for instance. If you mix just one headshot in, you will be cutting that down to a 3-shot kill as well, which for a DMR, that gives you an excellent time to kill without too much extra effort there, since only one bullet needs to hit the head. And just a slightly different way to look at it here to compare it to the other DMRs, here's what our ranges look like. And as you can see, this does have a very strange range profile for a DMR, like we've got very short damage range drop-off points. And at a distance, you are going to be outgunned by essentially all of the DMRs. And that's even before looking at the crazy low muzzle velocity we have with this gun. So let's dive into that. And as you can see, this is very, very slow at 303 meters per second. That is very significantly slower than all of the other DMRs. And it's a huge limiting factor with this gun that prevents you from using it like a traditional DMR. It can be quite difficult to hit even mid-range shots if the enemy is moving especially. So you really do have to be leading your targets and accounting for some extra bullet drop there as well. However, the benefit here is this gun is always subsonic. And combining that with the fact that the only 2 barrel options we have are both suppressed barrels, what this means is with this gun, you will never show up with 3D spotting, so you'll never have a diamond appear above your head for firing your gun. And depending on the barrel that you use, your 2D spot range is going to be quite low. So if you're using the 30-point factory barrel, this will give you a 9-meter minimap spot range, which is very, very short. That would be as if you're using a suppressor combined with subsonic rounds on like an SMG, for instance. Whereas the 20-point ASM barrel, that one gives you a 21-meter minimap spot range, which is comparable to just using a suppressor on a regular gun with no subsonic ammo. Even though, in this case, you're still dealing with the subsonic muzzle velocity. Either way, even with those benefits, this is going to be a huge limiting factor, especially with this being a DMR, which are traditionally used more for mid to longer ranges. But next up, let's have a look at our hipfire spread, and that's an area where the VSSM really excels relative to the other carbines. It does have the best hipfire spread in the category, and you can really notice this in close quarters engagements. Hip firing works very, very effectively, especially if you're within that maximum damage range at like 9.5 meters or less. I find hip firing is an excellent option there. Now, after that, let's have a look at our recoil, and this looks very similar to the recoil you'd see on most of the DMRs in this game, and that means there's just very little recoil. It climbs a little bit upward, and it does have a tendency to lean slightly to the right, but aside from that, it's very minimal recoil, and there's also no spread increase per shot, as expected with the DMRs in this game. Keep in mind though, if you are moving, you will still experience some spread with this, but when standing still, at least, there's effectively no spread on this gun, unless you're using the full auto attachment, which we'll be looking at in just a little bit. But next, let's have a look at our handling stats. And as you can see here, we've got a decent aim down sight time at 250 milliseconds. Our default sprint recovery time with the default attachments is best in category at 100 milliseconds. Our default magazine capacity is 20 rounds, which is also great for a DMR, and our reload times are best in category by a little bit at least. And so when it comes to handling, the VSSM does quite well for a DMR. And then finally, for the base gun at least, just a brief note on REDSEC. Against 2 armor plates, this gun is going to be a 6 to 9 shot kill. And up close, that gives us an excellent DMR time to kill potential against armor plates at 667 milliseconds, whereas at a distance, we're within the realm of average for a DMR at 1069 milliseconds. And with all of that covered, now let's get into the full auto attachment, which is in the ergonomic category for our attachments. and it costs 40 attachment points, so it will take up a big chunk of your attachment selection. But with this, it obviously converts the gun into full auto, and it increases the rate of fire up to 800 rounds per minute with no impact on our damage or range values. And this means it's still a 3-shot kill, but now at 800 rounds per minute, that gives us a 150 millisecond time to kill, which is ridiculously fast. And then even in our 4 and 5-shot kill ranges, we get very respectable time to kill values if we're putting them against like assault rifles, for instance, within those same ranges. And therefore, this gun hits very, very hard with the full auto attachments. However, the big downside here is the recoil is kind of all over the place. This gun does bounce around on you quite a bit. There's also a lot of spread that's introduced here, and we are still very heavily limited by that very slow muzzle velocity, so it will limit your potential at range. But overall, I would actually say the full auto attachment definitely has a place in the game. You can really excel with it. You just have to treat it as a close range only sort of gun, and you really want to be careful about trying to stretch your ranges out at all, because you're not only fighting with that really slow bullet velocity, you're now also fighting with a bunch of recoil and spread. Also, it is worth noting, in REDSEC, we get a pretty ridiculous time to kill potential at 375 milliseconds up close. So as an up close option, if you're pairing this with a gun that's designed to help you at longer ranges, this thing has a potential to really shred people. And so with all of that covered, now let's get into a couple excellent attachment combinations I wanted to share with this gun. And the first setup is my DMR setup, so I'm not using full auto on this one. And with it, I'm using the BF2M 2.5x optic. Really just go with whatever your preference is. I just quite like that one on this particular gun for some reason. I'm also using the 50 milliwatt violet laser. As I said, there's no spread if you're standing still, but if you're strafing a little bit in a fight, spread will start to come into play, and therefore the violet laser just gets that under control, so it allows you to strafe effectively in fights. Then we're using the 30-point factory barrel, so that's really going to limit our mini-map range to just 9 meters. We've got the slim angled grip for its handling benefits, also helps a little bit with recoil, but it's mainly for the handling benefits. We've got the 20-round fast mag on there for a slightly faster reload, combined with the mag catch to also help with our reload speed. And then finally, we're topping it off with the tungsten match ammo, which doesn't impact our muzzle velocity, but it does reduce the drag coefficient. So it makes it more effective, at least at longer ranges, than not using this match grade ammo. But this is still going to be a big limiting factor for you, so don't expect it to suddenly make this a beast at long ranges. It just makes it a little bit less bad at long range. And with this, you can see the recoil is still very minimal, and it is a little bit awkward, but I treat this like a close to mid-range DMR. Like right up close, you actually have a very good potential to kill enemy players, especially with hip fire, so it really does excel if you get right up close. And then at mid-range, it holds its own quite well because you're not dealing with all that spread and everything like many of the assault rifles will now be dealing with at mid-range. So it does give you a lot of potential to fight back effectively within those ranges. Beyond that though, you've got to be very careful not to extend your range too far because you will just straight up be outgunned by so many other guns in the game. As for the second build I've got for you guys, this is my full auto build. So of course, we are using the full auto attachment. I've got the mini flex optic on here. We once again have the violet laser. This time I'm using the cheaper barrel, the ASM barrel, so we do have a slightly larger mini-map range at 21 meters. But then we're once again using the 20-round fast mag and the match grade ammo, which does save us a little bit in the recoil department compared to the previous setup that was using the tungsten match grade ammo, because that one does harm recoil a bit. And with this, as you can see, there is still a fair amount of recoil. You really want to be keeping your ranges in check, but if you can keep yourself at close to medium ranges, you have the potential to dominate with this gun. It's just very unforgiving the moment you get outside of those ranges. And there we have it. That is going to wrap it up for today's gun guide on the VSSM. And when it comes to my overall thoughts on this gun, as a DMR without the full auto attachment, I do feel it is just a very awkward gun because it feels like it should be used at longer ranges, but it's just not very effective at those longer ranges. And while it does have potential to be quite effective at close to medium ranges, and it absolutely excels compared to the other DMRs at close to medium ranges, when you are putting it up against SMGs, carbines, and assault rifles, you're often still going to find yourself outgunned when playing to the strengths of this gun. So it does put it in a bit of an awkward place. And so I wouldn't say this gun particularly excels, but it is at least unique and forces you to play in a very different way compared to the other DMRs. And then when it comes to that full auto attachment, as I've been saying, I think there's a ton of potential there, but it is also quite unforgiving, and so far I've had fun with it. Now, of course, these are just my thoughts on this gun, and I'd love to hear what you guys think about it in those comments down below. If you enjoyed the video, a like rating is always appreciated, and don't forget to subscribe for more if you haven't already. I'll talk to you guys next time.